Welcome everyone. Today I'm so excited to share Superworld with you. We've been working on this for about 2 years now, and this will be basically the first time the public has ever seen it, and we're now looking for people to work with it. Superworld is a product from the company Supermodel. We're an AI research lab. We've built a language-guided world generation pipeline to create synthetic data, but we realized this is so much more than that, and we're now opening it up to the public. I'm going to start with a couple images of our worlds. Now, we're going to be quite outspoken here. I'm going to force you to speak. If you were to make something similar within your team, how large a team and how long do you think to make this type of image? I'm going to stay silent until someone yells at me, or I'm going to pick on people.
4 people, 4 weeks.
Cool. Someone said 4 people, 4 weeks. We're going to move on. If you're going to do a completely different architectural style, somewhere like Manhattan, how long? I'm staying silent again.
2 people, 4 weeks.
Okay, thank you. Finally, for terrain, how long? 1 people, 1 day? Yeah. So in reality, every single scene took 5 minutes with a 5-year-old. Is everyone with me? You all understand the concept? I'm going to show a video demo of what the product in its very earliest stage looks like.
Hi all, I'm Tobin, lead of the Superworld team. Introducing today our text-to-world generation. I've asked it to generate what cities are spooky in the world. From here, I can iterate with the LLM till I get a prompt I'm interested in generating. You can see it suggesting locations and dialing in the correct settings to pass to our world generation. Once I'm set on the tone, lighting, weather, and location, we can simply hit generate to send it to our cloud farm. Jumping to local generation, a couple minutes later, we've got our first world. Hey, cool, it's got the rain and skyscrapers I was going for. Feeling pretty good about this one. Check out some of the worlds I've generated recently. Want to see Superworld in action? Contact us to see a live demo.
So if you're unclear what you just saw, effectively, we connected an LLM to all of our Houdini tools. But why? We're at a procedural conference. We all understand the power of procedural here. I don't think I have to explain that to you. Why an LLM? Well, an LLM is fast. You can ask it 2,000 questions for every single one of your Houdini parameters, and it will set every single Houdini parameter in under 0.5 seconds. Now, I may be biased. I work at an AI company. But I truly believe text, image, maybe mesh input is going to be the input to every single tool in the next 3 to 5 years. It won't be forced on you. It will just be an option. I was really against it when my boss said, hey, integrate an LLM into your tools. I'm like, I don't want to chat with a bot. I then realized the longer I worked on it, it is tweaking things that as a tech artist, I would never want to tweak. Doorknob handles, for example. It can go and tune exactly that. You can have your objects call the LLM and say, I'm in this world, what should I be assigned? What materials? How old am I? What mesh? It can all generate for you. Now, while I was on Far Cry, about 6 months in, a producer would come in, game director, art director, with a whole new art direction. The vision has changed. And the whole game had to change. So you would start in Rome, and now you got to do Paris. I know, I'm certain there's people in this room that have felt that pain of you're redoing your tooling, it's affecting art, there are multiple stages. And so coming out of that, I wanted a pipeline that I could just iterate. Even if it was not the final make it pretty button, it was, I want to iterate fast, I want to basically block out a world, say, make it look like Paris, and I can just play in it, and 5 minutes later, and then keep iterating off of that world. Now, so if we've just made Manhattan, your art director comes to you and says, let's make it Hampstead in London. What are all the things that you have to think about? Again, this is interactive. I need someone to yell at me. What are the research types of things that affect your tooling? If we went from New York to Hampstead. Architecture, exactly. So architecture is one of many questions that you have to do research on. Your art director has to do research, most likely concept. It's very far-reaching to completely change city. let alone just the tooling. For me personally, I would have to research building heights, road materials. Does the city layout change? Like, did I make this for a grid layout tool? How is this affected? Now, we all love games here, and you know I love interactiveness. We're gonna do a quick quiz. So, what is the most common traditional roofing material in the historic center of Porto, Portugal? I'm gonna be nice for the first question and give you multiple choice. Again, I'm not moving on until you yell an answer back to me. Is it A, terracotta, B, slate, C, copper, D, ceramic? B, we've heard B and A. Correct answer is A. We're gonna increase the difficulty on the next one. What type of natural erosion has most significantly impacted Rome's terrain over its entire geological history? It's fluvial, river erosion. Almost every city is fluvial in the end. Almost every city is along a water line. So this is probably the most common type. And we're gonna round it off with the hardest question of them all. I will be very impressed if you know the answer to this one. What are the exact latitude and longitude coordinates for the Roman Forum? I don't know the answer either. But this is where an LLM comes in. Typically, this is all questions I could have Googled. I'm not blind to just spend the time and go and do the research. But if I know the questions that I want to do research on, and if we're at a company like Ubisoft that is doing a whole time period, and then we move on, we're doing it the next time period, you're gonna have very similar research questions that you're constantly asking. Why not set this up? And I gotta go to this monitor. So I've entered in 1,000 questions. We'll see if that plays. It does not want to. Beauty of live demo. You can do it. Well, you're gonna have to trust me. Effectively, in a minute 30, the video's fast forwarded, so I wasn't gonna force you anyway. You can ask 100, 1,000, 10,000 questions. In a minute 30, relatively, it will answer every single question. It is true it will hallucinate. We will tackle that later. It is true it will lie to you. For world generation, it's not killing someone. It's really unaffecting. And it's just so much faster than me doing the painful research. I can just hand this off to my LLM. So at the simplest core of all of this, using an LLM locally is not a hard thing to use. This is not pseudocode. This is the true code for it. It is a single line of code. You import Ollama, which is a local inference agent, deals with basically all of the back end, and then you say Ollama.generate, you choose your model, for example, Llama 3, which is open source, and you ask it a question, and it'll just print you the reply, all locally, all on your machine. That is not a hard problem. The hard problem is, one, scaling this to hundreds of thousands of users, two, actually controlling it and getting really good data for Houdini to use. So I don't want this to be a sales pitch today. I want this to be, I spent 2 years, this is all the pain I went through, so you don't have to. The first is building the prompt. If you ask a bad question, users typically are very bad at asking the right question. You're gonna get a bad reply. Either it's gonna be overly ambiguous or it's just gonna be completely unrelated. We're gonna tackle how do you build a good system prompt. The next is automated validation. I mentioned it lies to you. You do have to check this, and there are a couple of very easy ways to do this. And finally, caching it. You want to be able to iterate with an LLM. Otherwise, you're just asking a question and hoping what you get is what you wanted, which is so unlikely. So, I mentioned building the prompt. The entire left-hand side of this is basically the LLM workflow. This all lives outside of Houdini. We have a very large render farm that effectively we can offload the compute to. You could do this and just pay for the API cost to a farm, but effectively, I truly recommend this lives outside of Houdini just because you can cache and you can deal with the data and it's not locked into this one scene. And we'll tackle why in a moment. So we're gonna dive into system prompt. What is a system prompt? Well, a system prompt effectively is the brains and like the personality of this entire AI. For an AI to know, like, what am I even helping you with, you have to be like, you're the best AI in the entire world. You're gonna generate me cities. But you have to be very clear. So you have to say, you're an advanced AI, and you're gonna help me generate cities because I want a JSON from you. And so if you say, in the end, to the end content, it's gonna give you that. But it really doesn't know like what its purpose is in life. It has to know like, you're gonna configure parameters for me. You're gonna go and set things for my JSON. You have to basically reaffirm constantly like you're talking to a toddler. It's the same thing for an LLM. The next is you need to basically break down the decision making for the LLM. It doesn't really know what steps to do things in. And so if you want it to end up at a desired output, you have to say things like, think deeply, structure your thoughts, reflect on yourself. It sounds so silly, but it really improves your results working with an LLM. Things saying like, consider if X and B, do Y. So a real world example of that would be, if the person requests something historic, relatively choose older materials. This is where you can start thinking, my Houdini tools do this. I can now sway it and kind of influence. This is where you're adding your own personal twist, your own artistic touch to the LLM's even just thinking. And finally, the LLM, again, it really doesn't know that you're even using Houdini. So if you're providing a parameter file that's saying, these are all of my Houdini HDA parameters, it's going to be like, what do I do with this? So you have to go and describe every single parameter to the LLM. You're like, okay, I'm going to give you a file. This is how you use it. I'm going to give you those 1,000 questions I mentioned to you before. We do that one time per each prompt, and we say, here's 1,000 questions of research that I've already structured. It's not just the LLM coming up with questions and like assuming things. It is very structured. I know the material type, I know the road type, I know the erosion type, and this allows me to go and, when it's then setting what is the erosion type as a Houdini parameter, it can go and read its research. So you've created the system prompt. Effectively, at the small scale, you're a city creator AI. In reality, ours is 500 to 700 lines of code. It's all text, it's all human. I mean, you have to write it. If you don't know how to write it, ask an LLM. They are very good at writing their own system prompts. And you can say, this is my end goal. These are my considerations. These are the files. Flesh me out a system prompt. And now put that into your own Olama local version. So let's use the example of Hampstead, London. The first thing I mentioned is the regional questionnaire. These are your 100, 1,000, 10,000 questions that you know you're going to need research on. If your tool and what you're implementing is like a fence tool, you could probably be very specific and have like 10 questions. But if for us we're doing entire regions, terrains, cities, we have relatively a lot of questions that I know I'm probably going to want answers to, and this is the time to ask. So you've asked, what is the most common type of building materials? Again, longitude, latitude, anything that you really wanted to know. So imagine our Houdini tool is these two parameters, and that's it. The LLM doesn't know about it. So you need to describe, what does it do? Now, I'm assuming everyone here loves documentation, as we all do, but the LLM needs to read your documentation. The easiest way for all of this is put it on your node. In Houdini, for example, there is a help that when you hover over a parameter, it pops up for the user. The LLM can read that too. Effectively, we loop through all of our parameters. I showed a workshop yesterday. It will be recorded and released on how to do this purely through an LLM generating the code for you. But effectively, you can select your HDA and just say, export me a JSON file of every single Houdini parameter, and say, this is the parameter name, and this is the explanation for you. For example, Hampstead, it will generate something very similar to 51.55 and minus 1.78. For Unreal, you can ask the same types of things. This is not Houdini-specific concept. This is where I believe this is going to be in every single tool. I don't want to have to set time of day. I can just say, make it spooky, and it will go and set what it thinks is spooky, and they're like, actually make it in daytime. And so you can just iterate with a chatbot, and you can just keep setting any of your parameters. This is a file that we write out at any point, and you say, this is a JSON file of Unreal parameters. This is a JSON file of Houdini. If I'm just editing the time of day, I don't need to call the Houdini side. So effectively, this is your system prompt, or the prompt that you're asking the LLM for each Houdini parameter. Again, I mentioned this is simple. Again, not pseudocode. This is literally workable. You have your system prompt, telling it what are you actually doing. You concatenate in the area questionnaire, so your research, and you say this is the Houdini variable. With that, we attach the descriptor file for your Houdini parameters. So, what does this look like in the context of Hampstead? The first, again, overly shortened for all of this, but you get the gist. You're a city generator AI. The location is Hampstead. That's your research questions. Maybe you would have provided more context than that. Finally, for a Houdini tool, this is like the help of the HDA parameter. What is the average min-max building height for the city? Finally, your purpose, format it as a JSON. Again, running, not pseudocode. This is the real output of me just asking for a JSON through the LLM. Now, the one important thing, I mentioned this before, the LLM lies to you. It's pretty good. They're getting better daily. But this is something just your mind has to shift. You're like, I can't just assume it's correct. We really suffered, and I'm going to show you why we suffered for a long time until we figured out this was the problem. LLMs aren't perfect, especially at longitude-latitude coordinates. Like you need overly precision for a specific area. The red circle is where the LLM's positions put Hampstead. It is close, it is not Hampstead. The pain I suffered not too long ago was I wanted to generate New Zealand. What is near New Zealand but not New Zealand? The ocean. I was generating terrain that was flat. Everywhere except the island. I spent maybe an hour and a half just generating thousands and thousands of variants. The LLM never guessed the correct coordinates of any major city within New Zealand. That is not a hard problem to solve, though. So, at every stage of your asking the LLM, build in some type of data validation into your workflows, into your steps. If it's longitude, latitude, this is an instantly solvable problem. Use a Python library like GeoPy. GeoPy effectively, it calls Mapbox data, it can call any service you want, but you give it a landmark, a region, whatever you want, and it will go and look up the longitude and latitude coordinates of that area. In this case, you can see it's many miles precision better, and the green circle in the bottom left is on Hampstead. It's actually on Hampstead Station. I could probably have said Hampstead Heath, and it would have given me exactly on the hill if you wanted it. But in this case, how do you interact? Well, I can just ask the LLM, what city should this be, or what landmark? And it will return at least a natural language that I can pass to GeoPy, and GeoPy will give me the exact coordinates. The other is Houdini. Again, it does not know Houdini, it doesn't know what it's working with, it's just like assuming these questions. So originally I mentioned you have your Houdini parameter, and you have your help. This, again, is not enough for an LLM. What you need is more. So you give it a type. Don't just return me a number. Give it a default. In my system prompt itself, I say, if you're unsure, just pick default. For something like building facades, I'm almost 99% sure the city's going to have brick. It's probably a safe choice. I'll have the safest choice of every single Houdini parameter. And then the value range. This is where it's essential for your Houdini tools. As we build out our own tooling, I don't support every city in the world. I don't have architectural models for every area. And so I can say, these are your materials. These are what's only in my library. And it will choose its closest approximation. And so I think this is important to note because we never really wanted, this is one-to-one Paris, this is one-to-one wherever. Because I can't support every material in the world or every model in the world. But I can get close. I can get my approximation of it. And I can say, these are your three choices. For materials, we really pick it apart and say, red, a very specific, like auburn red brick. And if you go very, very specific for the LLM, it can relatively say, okay, in London, it's these 10 materials of your 200, 300 materials, and be pretty close to accurate, even though it's maybe not exactly correct. The final is, the LLM can just validate itself. This is actually really cool, and it took me a while to think about this, but it's so simple once you realize. As the user prompts something, let's say they prompt me Tokyo, and I don't have the data to do Tokyo. I could just ask the LLM, is this prompt about cities? is this about a city that is not in my list? If it is not in my list, choose a similar city, or just return an error to the user. Do you have enough information to even generate this? I mentioned this, the LLMs, maybe they will just blind assume, but if you're like, make it spooky, in the case of the very first like rainy Hong Kong city, it wasn't really enough information. And so it comes back to you and says like, okay, what do you mean by spooky? I mentioned users are terrible at prompting. This is the easiest way, that if the LLM's really unsure like what the user wants, just keep chatting back and forth and the user can be like, okay, I'm done, just generate it. But it really enhances the result because they don't really know what questions to ask, especially depending on your skill level. If it is your art director, if it's your 5-year-old niece, the chatbot's just gonna entice questions out of them and see what they really want, try and encapsulate a better picture of that idea, at least for the first version, and then you can iterate freely. So, iteration. This is actually probably the easiest portion of it all. The first is iterating on the world. I mentioned before, I didn't really like chatbots. While it is nice in the sense that I can say, make it darker, make it lighter, make the buildings taller, and it will just go and tune the parameters. These are human-readable CSVs in the end. I can just go in and tweak the CSV file myself. And so at any stage, I have the Houdini hips it's generated. You're not limited to just the text box, and I think that would be a terrible implementation of this, is you give the user as much context as they want. If it's a 5-year-old, maybe they're just going to touch the text input. If they're the concept artist, maybe they can upload a concept art. Maybe it's the level designer, they upload mesh. You really can like limit how much data, and so as we iterate and we generate these CSV files, we leave all of them on disk, because then you can go back and say, actually, we really liked the revision from 2 weeks ago. And you can say, okay, what did we like about it? And you can ask the LLM, like, show the 2 renders, and it will pick apart what parameters it thought actually generated those. I should have clicked that earlier. But effectively, you have your chatbot that you can just talk with it. Something like make it spookier is going to affect a lot of your parameters, versus make it lighter after it's generated is just going to do time of day. Now, what's worth caching? Everything. You should cache everything at every stage. Again, we're doing this all in a render farm. We have a lot of storage, so I understand that it's not possible for everyone. But you cache out every single stage of your Houdini process, your LLM generation, your Unreal, because then the LLM can just reprompt specific stages of the pipeline. You can say, okay, I love the city, but I hate those trees. Just generate those trees again. And it will just cache out and remove, how do you do this? USD. USD is probably the file format that is the easiest, that you can just pick and cherry pick what you're going to regenerate with the LLM. Now, Hampstead. I mentioned a long time ago that this is what I wanted to generate. This is our version of Hampstead. Evidently, it is not Hampstead, but it is close. I can squint my eyes and I can see it. So imagine your 8-year-old niece. She can generally generate anywhere, fully playable, generate crowds, traffic, nav mesh. It will do the entire Unreal pipeline too in under 5 minutes. And then if this was in Fortnite, Roblox, whatever, they're just generating their own games, creating their own play spaces. But for me, I mentioned this very shortly. Imagine a world where they're not stuck with Hampstead. I want Hampstead, but put it on Mount Everest. I want Tokyo, but feels like this area. Traditionally, that's conceptually quite hard to do. And LLM is very good at abstracting the concepts of, I want Tokyo, but put it on Mount Everest. It's going to understand, you could just ask it, like, what part of the prompt is for the terrain pipeline, what part of the prompt is for city. And you can say, okay, for the terrain, we're downloading the Mapbox data or whatever you want of Mount Everest, and now we're going to analyze what makes Tokyo. So this leads to coming soon, and we're going to wrap up here. I think it's fun to share some of the future advances, and again, what we're working on and what's, I think, going to be the future of everyone's tooling. I think this is unanimous. I don't think we're going to be the only ones doing this, and that really excites me. First is terrains. Majority of terrain games are in some type of terrain. Just having a system that automatically goes and finds the terrain you want, downloads it, runs its own erosion pipeline from Houdini, and it knows, okay, in this valley, run this type of erosion, It's fairly instant. But then you get to the really fun part, and this is concatenating concepts. I want Manhattan, but put it on a Brazilian hillside. And so you get all of the architectural styles, and it analyzes and sets my 2,000 Houdini parameters for all my building tools, but then goes and composites this automatically for you on any terrain anywhere in the world. And you can start to really come up with your own concepts. The final two are interesting. Self-iteration. I can just, once I prompted it and I know it has enough context, whether I uploaded my own concept art or it's just purely from text, it can just go and self-iterate itself. You can render out an image, a model like Gemma 3, which is multimodal. It means it can take in text, image, audio, or video. And so it can take in a render of your exact city and then say, okay, this is what I generated from your prompt. The buildings are way too short for what your prompt was. Now just regenerate. And it can constantly, you can let this run for 10 hours, 20 hours, and see how close. This comes with the concession that if your Houdini tool doesn't really do what the prompt is, you will never get close enough with something like a flip comparison. The final, and I think this is a little controversial, automated asset generation. You could say, I want to do Paris, but feel like Fortnite. I don't have the assets for that. I think this will come, and it's very shortly coming, something like Trellis or Haiyan. From prompt, will analyze every single prop in the scene, then pass this to Midjourney or some image generator, give you concept art for every single asset, we'll then feed it into our tool and automatically place it with the exact same rule set. You basically will automate any mobile game creation because it's going to be a while till we hit AAA quality. But mobile, this works already. Thank you so much. Please don't hesitate to contact us. I would love you to contact us.